In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a fully automated live updating stock portfolio dashboard in Excel that looks just like this. And it's going to have a couple of key features that allow you to make sure that your portfolio is properly diversified, including measurements of the cap size allocations, so the size of the companies that you're invested in, the sectors that you're invested in, as well as the specific stocks that you're invested in. And you'll be able to see at a glance what is your daily returns on any of your shares, as well as the total gain or loss on any of your specific stocks and your entire portfolio. So stay tuned and let's get right into it. The very first thing that we are going to start with, and the only manual part of this process really, is going to be the transaction log. So if you look on the screen here, you can see that this is basically a log of all the different transactions that have happened in my hypothetical portfolio. So I start with a stock ticker for each of the transactions. I say whether it was a buy, a sell, or a dividend payout. And then I include the date in which that happened. And I also include the quantity for buys and the quantity for sells. We don't need quantity for dividends or the price of dividends. And then for price, we just say this is the price that I bought this stock at, or for sells, right, this is the price that I sold this stock at. And then I can manually input my dividends, and my total amount is really just equal to the price times the quantity of each one. And once you have all that, really all you need to do is take that, highlight the whole thing, and then go to Format as Table, and I'm just going to choose this one right here. And yep, my table has headers, so I'll select OK. And then now I can see this right here, table 1. I am just going to call this transactions. And it's going to make our life a little bit easier. And then as you are doing more stock trading in the future, you can just add rows to the bottom of this table and it'll flow through to the rest of the model. Now that we've got all of our transactions entered, we're going to be taking a look at Microsoft's inbuilt Excel stock API for the first time. And so all we need to do is grab the first cell here, hit Control-Shift-Down arrow to highlight all the tickers, and then we'll go to Data, and then Stocks, and hit that. And now it's going to automatically pull in all the stocks from its API, or at least their names. And it gives us the name of the stock, then the exchange that it's traded on, and the ticker of the stock. You can see there's one it didn't find, which is Toyota Motor Corporation, and that automatically popped up over here on the right. And I'm just going to select the Toyota Motor Corporation on the New York Stock Exchange. And so there we go. Now we've got all the stocks we need. Now we can hop over to our dashboard and start filling things in. I didn't want to waste your time watching me do all this formatting. I trust you guys can format this yourselves, but basically we're going to start filling in the names, and we want this to dynamically update based on as we add more transactions. So we're going to do a formula called equals unique. So we're going to pull in all of the unique names in the transaction log. But first, we're going to filter by the stocks that actually still have outstanding quantities. And what I mean by that is basically we're going to only include the ones that have a sum of greater than 0, right? So if I bought, let's say, 30 MasterCard shares, and then I went and I sold 30 MasterCard shares, I wouldn't want the MasterCard to show up in the actual dashboard because I don't own any more of it. So now we're going to sum based on these tickers, and the criteria again will be these tickers, and the range that we're summing is quantity. So this is what tells us whether or not we have more than 0. And we want to just hit a greater than 0 at the end here, and we can close this formula up. And the formula is missing a parenthesis. Where is that? Right at the end. And we hit that. There we go. So that gives us every single stock in our portfolio that we have outstanding balances in. Now we just want to pull in the sector, which is really easy. We're just going to do equals, and we'll select this value. And then we're going to use a dynamic spilled array formula. So what that means is if I just hit this pound sign there, it highlights this entire area. So whenever we add more stocks, it will automatically update further down in this spreadsheet. So we never really have to worry about adding more stocks or dragging formulas or anything. And then we will hit dot, and then we will type in industry and hit enter. And there, we found out the industry for each of our different stocks. Now I'm interested in seeing the market cap in billions. And this one is going to be quite simple. It's just going to be equal to B7 once again. We'll use that spilled array pound sign, and then we'll hit dot. and then we will type in cap, market cap. There we go. So this gives us the market cap, but I think this is way too unnecessarily large, so I'm going to divide by 1 billion. And there we have it. So now we can see which of our stocks is basically a large cap, mid cap, or small cap. Large cap stocks are generally over $10 billion in market cap size. Mid cap stocks are somewhere between 10 billion and 2 billion typically, and then small cap are typically below 2 billion. So let's write a nested if function that will tell us what is the cap size of each of these companies. So we'll say equals to if this is greater than 10, we'll call this large. Then if this is actually not greater than 10, so if that's false, then we'll now look at whether this is greater than 2. And if it is, we'll call it a mid-cap stock. And if it is not, we'll just call it small. And we'll close these and hit enter. One thing I do want to do is I want to put the pound at the end of this here so that it spills just like the rest of them. And there we go. We have one mid-cap stock right here, 2 small caps, and then the rest are large cap companies. Now let's find out the number of shares we have outstanding for each of these stocks. And we can do that just using a SUMIF formula. So we'll type equals SUMIF. And then our range is going to be based on the actual names of the stocks. So let's highlight this whole column here. And then our criteria that we're going to be looking at is the stock here. And like we have been doing, let's hit the pound sign there so it spills. And then the sum range is actually going to be the number of quantities. So let's highlight this whole range and we can just close that. And then we see the number of shares we have outstanding for each stock. Let's find the current price of each of these stock positions. And it's quite simple. We just set this equal to the name. And then we hit the spillover formula dot price, and we can hit enter. And now we see what is the current value of each stock's price. And then when the market is open, you can actually refresh these prices live by going to data, refresh all, and just hitting refresh. While I'm making this model right now, the market's actually closed, so you won't see these changing, but you could refresh these every couple seconds in the course of a normal trading day. Now we can find out the total value of each of these positions by just simply taking the number of shares multiplied by the price per share. And there we go. We can see all of our values, although, I have to highlight that and hit the array symbol. There we go. So we've got all of our values in our portfolio. And now I'm curious as to find out the percentage that we have allocated to each of the stocks within the portfolio. And that is just going to be equal to this value here, the total value of that specific share, divided by the sum of all of the values of all the stocks in the portfolio. And actually, we can close that and hit enter. And we're starting to see the breakdown quite well. One other thing I want to add is the beta. And so what beta is it tells you a bit about the risk of a stock. It tells you how much to an extent that this stock moves with the market. And so a higher beta means a higher systematic risk. And so I think it's a good indicator that we can add quite easily with this API. So let's select this cell, hit the spill array pound sign, and then let's type in beta. There it pops up, and let's hit enter. And so what this is telling me is that Walmart, for example, has quite a low beta compared to most of these other stocks and shows a low amount of systematic risk. The one thing that it does not show me is the unsystematic risk, which is the risk specific to the company. So we can't totally infer Walmart's risk based on beta, but it gives us a good idea. Now we would like to see how much we've gained or lost today on each share in this portfolio on a dollar basis and a percentage return basis. So let's do the dollar return first. And this is quite simple. It's just going to be equal to the amount of each share's price right now subtracted by the amount that it started the day as. So we can select the name here, hit the pound sign, type previous close. And then this expression tells us the amount that we've gained dollar-wise on each share today. And now if we multiply that by the number of shares we own, that will give us the total one-day return in dollar form. And we can see we've not done very well today. We've lost money on most of these stocks based on the parentheses that you can see there. Now we just want to find out what was our actual return percentage, which is going to be equal to the amount that we gained or lost today, divided by however much we started the day with in that position, which is just going to be equal to this total value here. And then we actually have to subtract out the amount that we gained or lost today to get back to our starting value. Let's hit enter. And there we see what was our total percentage gain or loss on each position today. In order to find the total amount that we have gained or lost on any of these individual stock positions since they came into our portfolio, we're going to have to do a bit of a more complex calculation, and I've added a sheet called the Realized Profit and Loss, or P&L, that's going to allow us to do this more simply. So we want to pull in all of the stocks from our transaction log, so we'll do equals unique. So we want each uname uniquely one single time and hit enter. And there we go. That's all the stocks that we've ever bought or sold. Even if we've actually sold out of those positions, they'll still be included here. Now we need to look at the purchases and the sales separately. And for each, we want to find a number of shares and a price per share. Now, the number of shares is going to be fairly easy. It's just a sum ifs formula. So we'll do equals sum ifs. And there's two conditions that we're actually going to be looking for, right? So let's just grab our sum range first, which is the quantity. And then the criteria range 1 is we want the rows where the stock ticker actually matches the corresponding stock on said row right there. Now let's hit the pound sign. Now criteria range 2 is going to be whether or not this transaction was a buy. So let's grab that column, and then we can just type in buy in quotation marks and hit enter. And we see all of the stocks, the number of shares we have ever purchased of all the securities in our entire portfolio. Now we are going to calculate the average price per share that we paid for each of these different stock positions. And we're going to do this using a sum product formula. So let's type in sum product. And we're going to check a few different arrays. So we're going to have to check two conditions, and those conditions both involve the transactions table. So we're going to do transactions, and then we're going to check for stock ticker. And we want to make sure that the stock ticker matches the one that's in cell column B over here on the same row. And then we can just do an asterisk. So this will tell it to check for another condition. And now the second condition is also in that transactions table, but now we're going to be looking for the transaction type. And then we're going to make sure that it says that it is a buy. So let's set equal to buy and close that. So now we've checked for the two conditions, and now we just need to multiply it by the transaction amounts total amount column, just to make sure that we get the total amount that meets those two different conditions. And let's close the whole thing and run that. And so what this tells us is that we have spent $8,420 on all of the shares of this Umbrella Inc. stock. And if I go to our transaction log, we can see we've purchased this stock twice, and the total amount sums up to $8,420. And so we know we've done that right. But to now get it to the average price per share, we just divide it by the total number of shares, which gives us $84.20. And now you'll notice one thing, I didn't use that spilled array formula here with that pound sign because it'll break the sum product. So the way we can get around that and still make our model update dynamically, no matter how many stocks we add, is we can wrap this in an if error and a comma at the end, and then put double empty quotes. And then that means we can just drag this down as far as we want, and it will always update. No matter how many stocks we put into this portfolio, but it won't give us broken formulas if there's nothing in column B there. Okay, great. Now we can do the same thing for the sales part. So we need to check the number of shares here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take the same formula because it's really the exact formula. Do Control C, and then we'll go over here and do Control V. And now we just need to change buy to sell. So let's do sell. So that tells us exactly how many shares that we have sold. And then we can actually just make this a negative so that it doesn't show up as a negative value there. And now we need to find the price per share of all the shares we've sold, and that's easy. We just take this formula again, Control C, go in here, Control V, and then now we're going to change it once again to sell and hit enter. So now we get the price per share that we sold at, but we actually want this in a positive value. So let's throw a negative in front of the sum product. Hit enter, perfect. And now let's just drag this down basically as far as we drag down the one in the price per share bought column. And now we're ready to calculate how many dividends we've received on each of these stocks. In order to find how much dividends we've received from each of these shares, we're going to use a sum ifs formula with two different conditions. So let's just go ahead and type in equals sum ifs. And then the first thing we need to do is grab the sum range, which is going to be from the transactions table. And we're going to be looking for the column called dividend. There we go. So we'll be summing that based on these two criterias. The first criteria range is also going to be in the transactions table, and we're just going to be looking for the name of the stock, so stock ticker, and we want to make sure that it is equal to the value that we have in B4 right here. Let's again use that spelled array $. And then the second criteria that we're going to be looking for is also in the transactions table, and we're going to be checking the transaction type, so just column transaction, and we want to make sure that it is equal to dividend. Okay, and we can close that, hit enter, and we can see that the only stock that we have received dividends on out of all of these is Walmart. So if I go back to the log, that is correct. We just have one dividend received in this whole table. Okay, there we go. Now we have all the information we need to calculate our realized gain and loss. And this is just going to be equal to the number of shares that we have sold multiplied by the amount that we made on each of those share sales, which is just going to be the price we sold it for, minus the price that we initially paid for it. And then we can just add how much dividends we've received to factor in those dividends and hit enter. So that tells us we lost $2,056 on the 40 shares that we sold of this stock here. And then I just want to make it dynamic like the other ones so that we can drag it down. So let's wrap it in one more if error function, do the empty double quotes, hit enter. I entered too few arguments. Oh, one more parenthesis there, hit enter, and then I will just drag it down like I did with the other formulas. And now we are all ready to go ahead and calculate our total gain or loss on each of these stock positions. Now, in order to find the total gain or loss on each of the outstanding shares in our portfolio, there's going to be two components. First, we're going to be looking for the realized gain, and then we'll be looking for the unrealized gain. The realized component is easy because we already found it. We can just do equals VLOOKUP. The lookup value is going to be this right here. And then our lookup array or our table array is going to be in realized P&L. Let's just grab all these columns. So we're going from B to H, and H is in fact the 7th column. So I'm going to hit F4 to lock that in place. Hit 7 because that's the column index we're interested in, and then hit 0 because we want an approximate match, and hit enter. And so now we're looking at all this realized gains we've made. But you can see there's like, 4 stocks in here that we haven't had any realized gains. So there's this unrealized component. So now let's add to this formula. And the way we're going to realize or find our unrealized component is we need to take the number of shares that we still have outstanding, which we can see in column F. And then we can multiply that by the amount of price appreciation we have seen on each of these shares, which is just going to be equal to the current price per share subtracted by the average price that we paid, which we have available to us already. So we can do equals VLOOKUP. Again, we'll look at this value here. And then we're going to go back to the realized P&L sheet. And we're going to be looking at, we're going to be going from B to D. So I'm going to do that, hit Control Shift down arrow. I don't really care if I go all the way to the bottom of the sheet. We're looking for the 3rd column, and we're looking for the approximate match. And then we can just close this out with 3 parentheses. And now we've added that unrealized component to this, and we can see that we've actually lost money on most of the shares that we've invested in if we include both realized and unrealized gains. Now that we have all the information on each of our individual security holdings that we're interested in up here, we're wanting to find out our portfolio summary information. That is, what is our total gain or loss on our entire portfolio since the time that we bought our very first stock? And we want to find that out in dollar amounts. And I added a column here that's going to help us calculate that called realized gains. And it's just on an off-screen column to help us calculate. And there's two components to this. So one component is going to be the total gain or loss that we've earned on the stocks that are currently in our portfolio, like these ones. And then the second component is going to be any stocks that we had bought and sold in the past, and now those positions are no longer in our portfolio. Like, for example, JP Morgan Chase, we can see we purchased 50 shares and we also sold 50 shares. So now this stock is no longer in our portfolio and hence will not show up over here, but we still want to include it in our total gain or loss so we really know how we've done over time. So first of all, we're going to grab the realized gains of all of these stocks, which is just this part of this component that we calculated about a minute ago. And let's put that right here and hit enter. Okay, so we've got all of our realized gains. And then the way that we're going to come up with these total gains on the portfolio is we can just sum all of the gains on the currently existing positions in our portfolio. And then we also need to add the sum of all of the realized gains or losses over here. And then we'll also subtract the sum of the realized gains or losses that are currently in the dashboard. And basically what this second expression tells us is the gains or losses that we've realized in positions we've already closed out of, and just adding it to our total gains or losses on this dashboard and hit enter. So we can see since the very inception of our portfolio, we have lost $10,621 so far. Now let's find our daily gain or loss in dollar terms, and this one's really easy. We're just going to take the sum of column K. So let's grab that. Perfect. So today we have gained $345, and then let's look at our daily gain or loss in percentage terms. And this one, we're going to need a sum product formula, which we will multiply two arrays together, and the first array is just the allocation to each, and then the second array is just going to be the 1 day return on each. So we're just taking a weighted average based on the percentages in which each position makes up in our portfolio. So we see we're up 0.63% today. Now I want to add just two conditional formatting rules. I want to see my gains as green and my losses as red. So I'm going to highlight both those areas holding control on my keyboard, then go up to conditional formatting, add new rule, format only cells that contain, hit format. Actually, let's first do less than 0. So if it's less than 0, we're going to format it as a red color there and hit OK. And we want to add one more rule after that. So let's go back to new rule, and then we'll hit format only cells that contain, and then the cell value should be greater than 0. And now once we have that, we can set this font equal to green and hit OK. And OK, and there we go. We can see all our gains and losses quite clearly now. Now, to make those cool looking pie charts that I showed you at the very start of this video, we're going to use a sheet called Pie Chart Helper. So the first thing we're interested in is looking at our cap size allocations. And so we're just going to need to do equals unique, and then we're just going to pull in all of the different cap size names, which should only be 3 of them. There we go. And now we need to find out what percentage we're allocated to each of these 3. And we can do that quite simply using a SUMIF formula. The range that we're going to be looking at is actually this cap size range here. Then our criteria is going to be whichever row we're on here. So I can hit the spilled array pound there. And then finally, the range we're going to be summing is going to be this allocation percentage column right here in I. And then we can close that, and we see that we are most heavily allocated to large cap, and then most or least allocation is to mid. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did over here, but we're going to do it by sector. So let's do equals unique. Let's grab all of these sectors from here. Then for our, we can just close that formula. So that gives us all of our different sectors. Now for allocation percentage, that's just going to be equal to some if. So we're going to follow the same thing we just followed the last time. So we'll grab all these sectors as our range. Our criteria will be the sectors in here, spelled array pound, and then the sum range will just be, once again, the allocation column. And let's close that formula. And there we go. So now we've got everything we need to make our pie charts. The first pie chart I'm interested in making is the one based on the capitalization size of the companies. So I'm just going to highlight our handy dandy table we made here, then go to insert, and then go to the charts area, find the 2D pie chart and grab that. I'm going to hit Control X to cut it, and then I will go back over here and hit Control V to paste it. Now I'm going to speed it up while I reformat it and just make the chart look good. So now we can see a more nicely formatted pie chart for the cap size allocations. And my main takeaway from this is I think I might be a little bit overweighted in large and small cap stocks and perhaps a little underweighted in mid cap stocks. And the reason this is significant is that generally the larger the company, the less risk involved with investing in that company, but also the lower possible returns. So small cap companies generally should outperform mid and long cap companies on a long-term time horizon just because of the added risk that you're taking on when you invest in them. So it can be good to diversify across all three different cap sizes. Now let's add a pie chart that shows what sectors we are most heavily or least heavily invested in. And we can just do the same thing as last time where we highlight this whole table. Then we go to insert, charts, grab the 2D pie chart, hit Control X, and then we will paste it over here, Control V. And now I'm going to speed it up once more while I go to work on formatting. So I'm now decently happy with how this looks, and I can see that this gray section is huge, and I might be a little bit over invested in software and IT services. And we've seen periods of time where software and IT, as we can kind of measure with the NASDAQ index, has blown up or collapsed. And so I might not want to have, roughly 30-40% of my portfolio invested all in that one sector. Now, I just want to add one more pie chart, and that is one that's going to show me the holdings in my portfolio currently on a stock by stock basis. And I want to see that just to make sure that I'm not overexposed to any of my individual positions. And we're going to do this by adding a new column in our little helper columns area over here. We're going to set it equal to this B4 cell, or sorry, B7, and I'll hit the pound sign, dot, and then we're going to type in ticker. And we'll see that ticker symbol pops up. I'll double click that. And then now I can just hit enter. And so we've got all of our tickers, and we're going to use these as the horizontal axis for our new pie chart. So let's go to insert and then to pie charts, 2D pie, and it's going to be a blank pie chart. I can just right click on it, hit select data. Now I need to add the legend entries. So the series, I'll add that. It's going to just be called allocation initially. The series values here will be equal to this range of all these allocation percentages. I'll hit OK. And then I'm going to edit the horizontal axis labels, and those will just be based on these tickers right over here. Let's hit OK. And now we've got the pie chart we're interested in, but I'm going to speed it up while I reformat. And now looking at my new pie chart, I can clearly see that about half of my portfolio is allocated to Apple and this other company, Expensify. And I might be a little bit overexposed. I'm probably not well diversified if I have half my money in just two different stocks. So there you have it. Now we've completed our awesome looking stock portfolio dashboard that updates with live pricing in Excel. If you're interested in buying this file, you can check out the link in the description or in the pinned comment. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more content just like this, and have a great day. Thank you.